Succulents and cacti are easy, low maintenance plants to keep in your space, but they do need a bit of help, a bit of TLC to help them thrive. In this video, I'm going to share 6 of my tips that I've learned along the way, from watering, pest checking, light conditions, best pots to use, to help you as you care for your succulents and cacti. So let's get going. Succulents and... Ooh. Succulents and cacti store water in their stems, or even like these little succulent plants, they store water in their leaves and even in their roots. So they have an already built-in reservoir, a bit of a water tank, if you'd like to think of it like that, that they can draw from when they're thirsty. So we don't need to overwater, because if we overwater, the roots of the plants will die, which will kill the plant. So less is definitely more when it comes to succulents and cacti. They are used to dry, challenging conditions. They can thrive in our homes with a bit of neglect, with a bit of underwatering, and they will probably be happier rather than us overwatering them. So if you've got a busy life and you don't have a lot of time to water, definitely succulents and cacti would be the way forward for your busy life. I have a very, very prickly cactus here that I've had to move from downstairs, from downstairs to upstairs. I'm going to take this towel off and you'll see what I mean. So I need to be really careful here, because these spikes are absolutely brutal and you do not want to get these spikes anywhere near your body. It's brutal. I'll give you a bit of a close-up so you can see. I need to measure these spikes, but they are really, really long and really, really dangerous. I mean, you don't want to come near them. This plant is really quite dusty and it is in desperate need of a repot, which is on my list to do for this summer. There are some scraggly bits over here that I need to take off as well. I have neglected it for a little bit. There's a brown patch there, and I'm going to feel it in a minute just to feel if it's squidgy or soft, because that often means that the plant is rotting. And as you can see, it needs a fresh soil and a new pot to help it to thrive. I'm a little bit nervous sitting next to this. I perhaps need to just sit quietly. I have a paintbrush here, and I'll show you why I'm going to use a paintbrush in a minute. It's important to keep our succulents and cacti clean, not just because it makes them look good, but also with us continually cleaning our succulents or cacti, it just keeps us checking in to make sure there aren't any pests forming. Sometimes if you look really closely on some leaves, there could be a layer of dust which we need to remove, just so that the plant can photosynthesize and take the necessary energy from the natural light from the sun. There's also temptation for spider webs to form. I've got a paintbrush here. You can use a bigger paintbrush depending on the size of your plant, but I tend to just give it a clean, because obviously you don't want to get your fingers in those spines. I give it a clean. I find it quite therapeutic as well, and just in the process check for any pests that might be forming, and just remove some of that dust and some of those cobwebs to make your plant look really nice and clean again. As you can see on here, there are lots and lots of cobwebs. I perhaps need a slightly bigger paintbrush, but paintbrushes are great just to remove, that one's stubborn, just to remove some of these cobwebs and just to keep this plant clean. There are some unwanted fibres here as well, which I don't know where it's come from, probably from the towel I've just used. But yeah, it's just a good time. Spiders do, believe it or not, spiders do nest if we don't keep them clean. And you can see quite a lot of the dust coming off here as well. So use a paintbrush and just in between the spikes, clean it and remove some of those cobwebs to make your plant look clean and healthy again. Of course, you can hose this down as well. If your plant is outside, just use a hose during the summer months, and you can even keep it outside. I mean, this plant is really robust. I think it can really thrive in any conditions, but not frost. I wouldn't leave it outside during the winter months. I bring it inside and I put this plant outside during the summer months. Light is really important for succulents and cacti. For a smaller succulent plant like this, I keep in a bright spot, but perhaps not in direct sunshine, because the leaves can scorch, particularly during mid-summer months. So it's still in a bright spot, out of direct sunshine. But plants like this cactus with spikes on, and especially this one behind me here, can thrive in some bright, direct sunshine during the summer months. I tend to take my cacti outside. If I know they're hardy, if I know they're quite well established, you can create a succulent garden outside. Just check if you live in a high rain climate. If it receives too much rain and perhaps the roots of the plant get too soggy, you may just want to watch out for that, because obviously they are drought tolerant and they don't need that much water. But generally, bright, some direct sun for some of them would be great to help them thrive. Succulents and cacti love a well-draining soil. So what does that mean? It means it's a soil that has extra grit or extra sand, so that when you water your plant, the soil isn't too dense. It doesn't trap the water in the middle of the plant. It's free pouring, free flowing, so that the water can drain out freely to keep the roots of your plants safe and not waterlogged. So when I pot up my succulents, sometimes when I buy a new succulent, I like to replace the soil. I simply take a peat-free soil and I mix it with some extra sand, just some grit to give it a bit of drainage. If you've got a natural fertilizer like worm castings, you can add that as well, because worm castings is a slow release plant food for them. I personally find the soil bags in garden centres or shops, wherever you go to buy your soil, is a little bit too dense, especially for succulents and cacti. So I would use that soil in the garden centre, but I would add some extra grit, some extra sand to make it a nice sandy consistency, so that it's nice and well draining for my succulents and cacti. So you can absolutely buy the soil bags wherever you buy your soil from, but especially for succulents and cacti, I'd always recommend just to add a bit of sand, even some grit, some building sand. It's got some nice grit to it. Just mix it to the soil and you'll find it adds a nice gritty consistency, which succulents and cacti love. I have a lot of my succulents and cacti in terracotta pots, and that's because terracotta is porous. It removes excess moisture that might be in the soil through the outer wall of the pot, and it dries the soil out quickly, which is great for succulents and cacti. I typically wouldn't plant plants like Monstera, Philodendron, your tropical house plants. I wouldn't pot that in terracotta because their soil doesn't need to be so dry. But for succulents and cacti, it's the perfect solution, especially if you think you're an overwaterer. Terracotta will just help you drain the moisture out of the soil quicker, and it will just help those roots thrive, and it won't be sitting in a soggy soil. So next time when you repot your plants, aim for terracotta for succulents and cacti. I also, over time, I love this rustic look that terracotta pots bring, and it's purely from watering and age that creates that. So I'd really recommend terracotta pots because it dries the soil out quicker to keep those roots healthy. Some general maintenance tips is to remove some old leaves from succulents, especially these little ones. You can't always see them, but there's a dead leaf just under here. You simply pull it out and just keep that plant really nice and tidy. Also, the growth of the plant can go to the healthy part of the succulent rather than focusing on the dead leaves that you have on your plant here. So next time, just check underneath your succulent plant. They could be quite well hidden, but they pull out really easily. It's also another good way to check for pests and just to remove the temptation for pests forming if we continually keep up the general maintenance. I've had this plant for a long time and it's in desperate need of a repot, but I've seen some discoloration on the base of this plant, which worries me a little bit because it could be a cause for root rot. Now, obviously, I don't want to stick my fingers in here, so I'm using the base of my paintbrush, and just to show you that discoloration on here, and just to check whether it's squidgy or mushy, because that could be a sign of root rot. I'm simply just pressing on the base. It's hard, it's not squidgy, it's not mushy, which is great. I think this plant just needs a repot, some fresh soil. So whenever you want to check for some root rot, always just take something and just gently press. If that presses in and it's really mushy, that could be a sign of root rot, which means your plant needs to be rescued, repotted, perhaps chopped down. It can be done, it can be rescued, but it's always a good way just to check for any mushiness, because that is not a good sign and it could be root rot. I hope you found that helpful. If you've got any questions, please drop them below. But thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.